Fred Vasseur just answered the question every Formula One fan has been asking since Suzuka. Why did Lewis Hamilton have less power than Charles Leclerc in the same car, on the same day, running the same Ferrari power unit? Hamilton asked his team directly after the race. He got nothing. His engineer went quiet. The radio cut to silence. Vasseur finally broke that silence after the checkered flag. And his explanation, it was not a mechanical fault. It was not a software error. It was something far more complicated than that. That was Sunday, March 29th, 2026. 3 races into the new era. By the time Vasseur walked to the microphone, Hamilton had already dropped from 3rd to 6th in the final 15 laps. And the gap between what he experienced and what his teammate experienced in the same Ferrari was about to become the biggest talking point of the season so far. What actually happened at Suzuka? Here's what happened on the Suzuka circuit, and why Vasseur's answer raises more questions than it settles. Hamilton qualified 6th. Leclerc qualified 4th. Neither driver was particularly close to Mercedes at the front, with Leclerc sitting roughly 6/10 off pole and Hamilton around 8/10 adrift. The qualifying pace told a clear story about who had the fastest car, and it was not Ferrari. But qualifying and racing are different animals, especially under the 2026 regulations, where energy management over a full race distance can reshuffle the order completely. The race at Suzuka started cleanly. Ferrari ran both cars in formation through the opening stint, managing tires, managing battery deployment, keeping the Mercedes pair honest without burning through their electrical reserves too early. Hamilton settled into a rhythm. The car felt good. The degradation was manageable. He was running where the team expected him to run. Then a mid-race safety car bunched the entire field together, and Hamilton made the most of it. He passed George Russell on the restart, drove cleanly into 3rd position, and for roughly a dozen laps, looked locked in for back-to-back podiums after his maiden Ferrari rostrum in China 1 week earlier. The SF26 was working. Hamilton was working. The result looked secure. Then, somewhere around the final 15 laps, everything unraveled. Leclerc closed on him through the back straight and drove past. Russell repassed him shortly after. Then, Lando Norris swept through in the McLaren. 3rd became 6th in the space of a handful of laps, and the speed at which it happened was startling. Live timing showed Hamilton losing roughly 3/10 per lap to the Leclerc-Russell battle ahead of him, and his radio told the rest of the story in real time. The messages were blunt. Less deployment. Why did Leclerc just catch him down the back straight? He needed power. And as Norris drove past on the pit straight, the McLaren had so much more than he did. After the checkered flag, Hamilton went silent on the radio entirely. No cool-down lap comments, no acknowledgement, just silence. That alone tells you everything about where his head was. But here's the detail that everyone missed at the time. The post-race reaction was sharp. Hamilton made it clear, point blank, that Leclerc had more power than him. Same team, same engine, same race. He was at full throttle, managing where the team asked him to manage, and still lacking power. The question was whether something was wrong with his car. Not whether the strategy was wrong, not whether the tires were gone, whether the car itself was producing less than his teammates. That is not the kind of thing a 7-time world champion says casually. That is a driver who felt a difference in the machine underneath him and wants the engineering data to either confirm it or explain it away. And the way he said it, without hedging, without softening the accusation, made it clear this was not frustration talking. This was a demand. The Ferrari team principal's response centered entirely on the mechanics of the 2026 regulations, rather than any hardware difference between the two cars. The explanation was the overtake mode system. To understand what he meant, you need to understand how power works in these new cars. The 2026 power units run on a roughly 50/50 split between the internal combustion engine producing around 500 brake horsepower and the electrical system, which now delivers another 500 brake horsepower through a massively upgraded motor generator unit. The old motor generator unit in the previous generation of cars produced around 160 brake horsepower. The new one produces more than 3 times that, which means electrical energy is no longer a supplement. It is half the car's total output. Russell in Australia, Antonelli in China, and Japan. The qualifying gap has been consistently 5 to 7 tenths, narrowing somewhat in race conditions, but never disappearing. Ferrari's SF26 suffers from what engineers call early clipping, where the electrical power runs out before the end of long straights, costing crucial tenths every lap. The battery empties too soon. The car runs out of electrical energy with 200 meters of straight still left. There is nothing the driver can do except watch the car ahead pull away. The Suzuka radio captured the frustration perfectly. Leclerc was going faster in corners, getting on the throttle earlier, and still losing everything on the straight. That is a driver doing everything right with the chassis and tires, only to watch the advantage evaporate the moment the power unit must do the work on its own. On Hamilton's side, the contrast was even starker. Mercedes essentially has a modern equivalent of the old party mode, the qualifying power boost that made them famous during the turbo hybrid era. Ferrari simply cannot match it. Their power unit clips early, while Mercedes delivers all the way to the braking zone. On a track like Suzuka, with long straights and high-speed corners, that gap is devastating. Ferrari is already working on an electronic reconfiguration of the engine to optimize hybrid deployment. The team also qualifies for the mid-season power unit upgrade provision, allowing a redesigned engine when a manufacturer falls more than 2% behind the leader. A new engine is already running on the Maranello dyno, with the hope it arrives in time for the Miami Grand Prix on May 1. This is where the overtake mode explanation looks like only half the story. Yes, Hamilton lost access to the boost when he fell outside 1 second, creating a cascade. But the cascade was so punishing because Ferrari's base power output is already inferior to Mercedes. When Hamilton lost overtake mode, he wasn't falling back to a competitive baseline. He was falling back to a power unit that clipped early, already losing tenths on every straight, already operating at a deficit that Leclerc's tactical brilliance could partially mask but not eliminate. The rivalry adds another layer. Hamilton's 2025 season was the worst of his career since his rookie year. 6th in the championship, 86 points behind, without a single podium across 24 races. In qualifying, Leclerc led the head-to-head 19-5. The 2026 regulation reset appeared to level things. After 3 races, Leclerc has 34 points, Hamilton 33. The question is whether the energy management learning curve permanently favors Leclerc, or whether Hamilton can adapt to the new deployment demands and close the gap. Ferrari is introducing a new race engineer for Hamilton from the Miami round onward. This signals the team recognizes that optimizing Hamilton's side of the garage remains unfinished work. The pairing with his current engineer produced a podium in China but a collapse in Japan. Something needs to change in how information flows between pit wall and cockpit, especially since the driver now carries much more of the energy management burden alone. The official Ferrari explanation focused on race dynamics and energy management tactics. There was no confirmation or denial of any hardware discrepancy. Hamilton's direct post-race question was simple: "Is there something wrong with my car?" Ferrari has not given a direct answer. How that conversation resolves in Maranello over the coming weeks may determine whether the Suzuka power gap becomes a footnote or a fracture line in Ferrari's 2026 campaign. The chassis might be among the best on the grid, the car fast enough through corners, but until Ferrari solves the engine, Hamilton and Leclerc will keep fighting for third place while Mercedes drives away. That is a problem no amount of clever overtake mode tactics can fix.